It was the tweet heard around the world. Dave Meltzer, perhaps professional wrestling's most well-known journalist, answered a tweet about Ring of Honor ever selling 10,000 tickets to a show, and his pessimistic response led to Cody Rhodes accepting the challenge of doing just that.
I think we're roughly 65,000. It's very exciting, and we're well over the 8 million mark, and
but we are getting ahead of ourselves. Pardon the wrestling, but I am Brian, and today we take a look back at the origin story of All Elite Wrestling and the original All In event and where its stars are at in 2023. But before we get started, if you are new to the channel, hit the subscribe button for more professional wrestling content just like this, and hit the like button as well so your fellow fans can find this video just like you did. As of this video's posting at the beginning of June 2023, we are a couple months away from the second ever All-In event and the first official one under the AEW banner. But just like the first All-In event, Tony Khan and the Young Bucks plan to make history once again. The very first All-In event was an event produced by Ring of Honor, which at one point in wrestling history found itself as the king of the independent wrestling scene and was a firm number 3 promotion in America behind WWE and Impact Wrestling. ROH produced big names such as Seth Rollins, Samoa Joe, Bryan Danielson, and of course CM Punk, and many other main event names that graced our television sets many years later. At the time of the All-In event in 2018, ROH was home to names like Cody Rhodes, Britt Baker, the Briscoes, Deonna Purrazzo, and Hangman Adam Page, some of wrestling's biggest names in 2023. But it wasn't just ROH that was shown out at All In. This was independent wrestling after all, so other promotions got involved in the mix such as New Japan Pro Wrestling, AAA Lucha Libre, and even a WWE Hall of Famer, but more on that later. As I mentioned, the goal of this video is to give you an update on where every wrestler from All In is at in the summer of 2023. And because I am about making this video as timeless as possible, we will avoid spoilers of the actual matches. I remember watching the show when it aired live and even going back every now and then to relive one of the most unprecedented events in wrestling history, and I want you to enjoy the same experience if you haven't seen it yet. However, I can't control the comment section, so be warned as many people will spoil things down there. WGN America was once home to wrestling shows. Did you know that? Before the main pay-per-view started, there was a pre-show done on WGN and it held 2 matches. The first match was a tag team match between SoCal Uncensored, better known as SCU, versus the Briscoes. Christopher Daniels, Frankie Kazarian, and Scorpio Sky together formed the group known as SCU. And 5 years later, the group no longer exists, which is odd considering how prevalent in wrestling they were at the time. We'll talk about Daniels a little later on since he'll appear elsewhere in the show. Scorpio Sky is currently with AEW and has been since the onset of the new promotion. He has primarily been in the TNT title scene, having won the title and, in my opinion, had the best looking version of the TNT Championship. He's not been seen since the summer of last year when he lost that title to Wardlow. He was out with injury and has since been cleared but still remains off television. His tag team partner Frankie Kazarian has a far more recent history and notably left AEW last year and made his return to Impact Wrestling. Frankie has had his sights set on the Impact World Championship as it is the one championship in Impact that has eluded him so far. His first attempt at challenging for Steve Maclin's title was thwarted as he lost a 6-man scramble #1 contenders match at Under Siege in May. Mark and Jay Briscoe, collectively known simply as the Briscoes, have a pretty strong argument to be named the greatest tag team of all time. And that is not something to be uttered lightly considering how talented that pool can be, even with their contemporaries and rivals FTR being in that same conversation. Unfortunately, this video will start on a sad note as Jay Briscoe sadly passed away earlier this year. Jay's death affected the entire wrestling world, even garnering mentions from WWE during an episode of SmackDown, despite never having worked for the company.
Condolences to the family of Jay Briscoe. Jay passed away suddenly earlier this week.
The Briscoes' footprint is all over wrestling, having worked with countless people over the last 20 years. At the time of Jay's passing, the Briscoes were ROH Tag Team Champions, having just beaten FTR in one of the best dog collar matches you will ever witness. The week after Jay's death, Mark Briscoe appeared on AEW Dynamite for the very first time in the show's main event in one of the most emotional matches you'll ever watch with Jay Lethal, a match that was held on Jay's 39th birthday. Following the match with Jay Lethal, Mark Briscoe is officially All Elite as it was announced he was signed with AEW. Most recently we saw Mark was just this past week at Double or Nothing 2023 being the special guest referee in an AEW Tag Team Championship match where FTR successfully defended against Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett. The second match was the #1 contendership match for the Ring of Honor Championship, in which the winner would get a shot later in the night against Jay Lethal. This match saw 19 participants in the Battle Royal, so we'll just run quickly through where everybody's at. Chucky T and Trent Beretta are in AEW alongside their best friends cohorts in Orange Cassidy and Chris Statlander. Bully Ray is firmly in place in Impact Wrestling, currently involved in the main event scene after helping Steve Maclin put Scott D'Amore through a flaming table at Under Siege back in May. Rocky Romero is primarily a mainstay with New Japan Pro Wrestling, but has made several appearances in Tony Khan's iteration of Ring of Honor. Moose is currently with Impact Wrestling, and much like Frankie Kazarian, also came ashore to Under Siege for an opportunity to regain the Impact World Championship. Tommy Dreamer is with Impact as well, having most recently been involved in the program with his former ECW rival Bully Ray. Brian Cage is with AEW, currently affiliated with Mogul Embassy, a group led by Swerve Strickland. The Hurricane is the first person we get to discuss, currently involved with WWE, as he is signed under a Legends deal with the company and has produced matches over the last couple of years. Next up is someone you may not have realized was at this event, and that is Punishment Martinez, better known to WWE fans as Damian Priest, 1/4 of the Judgment Day. Priest most notably was involved in the arguable match of the night at WWE Backlash against music superstar Bad Bunny. That is not a bad career trajectory at all. Ethan Page is currently signed with AEW, and as of this video's recording, has his contract now owned by Matt Hardy in their ongoing feud. Chico El Luchador is in this match, and to not spoil any part of this event, that's all I'll say about him. Jimmy Jacobs still wrestles in the Independents, but is signed with Impact Wrestling as an agent. Both Austin Gunn and Billy Gunn are both signed with AEW and have famously been involved throughout AEW's history together. Austin is a former AEW Tag Team Champion with his brother Colton, and Billy is 1/3 of the Acclaimed. Colt Cabana is with AEW, most notably spending time involved with the Ring of Honor promotion and working backstage. Cheeseburger is a perennial name on the independent scene, but has also made a few appearances in Tony Khan's ROH. He also has a victory over Speedball Mike Bailey under his belt, which is not an easy feat. Marco Stunt was most notably involved in AEW as 1/3 of the Jurassic Express team with Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus. He had a falling out with AEW and was let go from his contract last June. Of the wrestlers so far, he has had the least amount of activity, having only wrestled one match this year, according to Cage Match, in which he lost to Mike Jackson at a GCW pay-per-view. Brandon Cutler is with AEW and is most often seen with the Young Bucks at ringside or in segments on BTE. And the last participant in the Battle Royal is the Juggernaut Jordynne Grace, the only female competitor in this Battle Royal, most recently challenged Deonna Purrazzo for the Impact Knockouts Championship at Under Siege last month in a losing effort. Fightful reported after that match that she was now a free agent and will be pursuing outside interest before getting back to the ring. I'm making an early prediction. This is to throw off the surprise debut of hers at AEW Collision. Yeah, talk about a random prediction in this video. First match of the All-In pay-per-view featured a pretty big name in 2023, as it was a singles match between M-Dog Matt Cross and Maxwell Jacob Freeman, MJF. Let's start with the one you may not be too familiar with. Matt Cross has worked in nearly every promotion that exists out there, including Ring of Honor and the NWA. Found success in the Lucha Underground promotion that featured a who's who list of names that will make you say, no way, they were in that? Matt Cross has recently been a part of MLW, but is mostly found wrestling on the independents. Outside of that, the former Tough Enough contestant hasn't been featured in any major promotions such as WWE or AEW, and it's his opponent in the match that in 2023 may be one of professional wrestling's absolute best. MJF is an example of someone who is exactly who they say they are, and when it's a heel doing that, that almost makes them even better at their job. Ian Riccaboni, who was a play-by-play announcer for the event, called MJF one of the best kept secrets in professional wrestling. Talk about clairvoyancy. Even in 2018, MJF had this character of his dialed in, and not much has honestly changed, and I mean that in the best way possible. Hell, even MJF has the same entrance music even before AEW's existence. The once and future AEW World Champion is all we really need to say about this man, as we all know where MJF stands in 2023, and that is arguably the best heel in all of professional wrestling and the current AEW champion. Next up was the celebrity portion of the All-In event, as Christopher Daniels challenged the Green Arrow himself, Stephen Amell. At the time of All In, I was in one of my moods where I didn't watch all the wrestling I possibly could, but I watched sporadically and always read TV reports to stay up to date with what was going on. While the idea of All In was incredibly appealing for me at the time, what pushed me over the top, oddly enough, was Stephen Amell's involvement. I'm a self-proclaimed mark of the Green Arrow, as he's my favorite superhero, so the show Arrow always held a special place in my heart, and by extension, I was excited to see Amell's follow-up from SummerSlam when he faced off against Cody's alter ego, Stardust. Fun fact, when Cody appeared on the TV show Arrow, he was a drug dealer peddling a drug called Stardust. Anyway, Amell himself is currently a star of a professional wrestling drama television show known as Heels. The second season is awaiting its debut on Stars, and I highly recommend you check out the first season. And it even features some real wrestlers in it, including some guy named CM Punk. As for Amell's opponent, we have Christopher Daniels, who is one of the most accomplished professional wrestlers on the planet, having wrestled all over the world and has won nearly every championship possible wherever he goes. We briefly touched on his SCU partners earlier, which at the time he was a part of. Daniels, like Scorpio Sky, is with AEW and wrestles from time to time, but is primarily AEW's head of talent relations. Next up was a 4-corner survival match between some of women's wrestling's future and past stars. Tessa Blanchard. When talking about Tessa, you can't just help but wonder what could have been. She's the daughter of 4 horsemen Tully Blanchard, and with matches with the likes of Will Ospreay, Toni Storm, and Kairi Sane under her belt, she seemed to be on the fast track to superstardom. In fact, she would even go on to become the first woman to win a major promotion's main championship by becoming the Impact World Champion after defeating the Death Machine, Sami Callihan. Something no woman in WWE, WCW, or AEW is able to say. But due to backstage incidents, including one that was racially charged, she was stripped of the championship and was released by Impact. This has made it near impossible for her to find footing with any major promotion since. She primarily works independents and was most recently seen with XPW. Chelsea Green was the second woman in this match, and much like the previous wrestler, was also an Impact for quite some time. The former Knockouts champion has found success in several promotions she has found herself in, and while she didn't have as high of a ceiling as Tessa, Chelsea found her way back to WWE and is currently involved in tag team with Sonya Deville. And she currently has possibly my favorite introduction to the ring by any wrestler.
From Victoria, BC, Chelsea Green.
When her career is all said and done, Madison Rayne will be able to say that she's one of wrestling's most accomplished in the women's division. The multiple-time Knockouts World and Tag Team Champion was a mainstay in TNA, with Angelina Love and Velvet Sky collectively known as the Beautiful People. It's an interesting story for someone to have wrestled so long and notably to never do so for WWE, but here we are. Her knowledge and longevity of the business has certainly been appreciated by none other than Tony Khan, as Madison wrestles every so often with AEW, but is primarily one of the coaches in the women's division. And last but not least in this women's 4-way match is the Doctor, Britt Baker. Britt is perhaps the most notable name from this match, at least by current professional wrestling standards. Like MJF, if you're watching wrestling in 2023, there's a significant chance you are familiar with who Britt Baker is and what she is doing. But in case you aren't, she's a former AEW Women's Champion and is currently in the midst of a feud with the group known as the Outcasts, featuring Toni Storm, the current AEW Champion, Ruby Soho, and Saraya. Britt is the current highest ceiling of these 4 women with plenty of room to go. She's had some wars with Thunder Rosa inside a steel cage and an unsanctioned match that are definitely worth going back to watch. Couple that with legit badass moments in her short career, the face of the AEW women's division has plenty left to accomplish for All Elite Wrestling. The next match features the national treasure and defending NWA World's Heavyweight Champion Nick Aldis versus some bloke named Cody. Nick Aldis may be one of the biggest names to never step foot in the ring for the WWE and AEW during the modern era. Aldis helped revitalize the NWA brand name in the post-millennium era, and Aldis is the consummate professional wrestler, who, when you look at him, you just get the feeling that this guy is an absolute star. So not only was it a surprise, but a big boost for Impact when, after receiving his requested release from the NWA, he appeared at Impact Wrestling's Rebellion pay-per-view. And since his return, he has gone on to defeat Kenny King at last month's Under Siege pay-per-view. Impact has several legitimate babyface contenders to challenge newly crowned Impact World Champion Steve Maclin, and Nick Aldis is on that short list. Cody Rhodes is such an interesting and unique story, and this video is not the place for the history of the American Nightmare, but again, if you're watching pro wrestling in 2023, you know who Cody is. Cody helped bring this all-in event together and would go on to help the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Tony Khan create All Elite Wrestling, which is why his departure from AEW was incredibly shocking. Cody is without a doubt WWE's #1 babyface, and it's only a matter of time before he dethrones Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins to become the guy in WWE. In a Chicago street fight, it's Hangman Adam Page versus Joey Janela. Hangman Adam Page is a former Ring of Honor and AEW World Champion, and at times throughout AEW's history, their top babyface. The anxious millennial cowboy is 1/4 of the Elite alongside Nick and Matt Jackson, the Young Bucks, and the cleaner Kenny Omega. Hanger has been a day oneer with AEW, and if he were to ever leave the promotion, it would come as a complete shock, much like Cody leaving did. As of this video's posting, we are well on our way to AEW's next Blood and Guts match that will likely feature Hangman Page teaming up with his elite brethren versus the Blackpool Combat Club. Joey Janela is a veteran of the Squared Circle and was one of AEW's first signees upon its launch. He signed a 3-year deal with All Elite Wrestling and had matches with most of the company's top stars such as Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega. AEW, however, opted not to re-sign the bad boy when his contract expired. In an interview with Denise Salcedo, he told her he thinks the writing was on the wall after he broke Eddie Kingston's orbital bone via a super kick. Nowadays, he continues to wrestle throughout the indies and has taken a strong interest in the development of the future of the professional wrestling business, specifically citing names like Nick Wayne. Not sure if we will see bad boy Joey Janela on a major stage anytime soon, but there's a chance he shows up in a town near you wrestling for promotions such as GCW. If you're enjoying our look back at All In 2018, be sure to hit the like button as that is the easiest way for others to find this content just like you did. And of course, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification so you can stay up to date with more professional wrestling videos just like this. Again, because I don't want to spoil any part of the event, for the Ring of Honor World Championship match, all I'll say is Jay Lethal defends the title here against the Battle Royal winner from the pre-show. Besides, we already talked about the winner's history. As for the defending ROH champion Jay Lethal, Jay has had an incredibly storied career up to this point, having been a major part of Ring of Honor and Impact Wrestling in his career. He spends the majority of his time in All Elite Wrestling nowadays in a group that would surprise you with how entertaining it has become. That group includes former NBA player Satnam Singh, Sanjay Dutt, and Jeff and Karen Jarrett. Yes, the Jarretts are part of this group and it's absolute gold. Global Force Wrestling gold. Seriously, Jay Lethal has been positioned in a pretty decent role, regularly getting television time and has consistently been in the hunt for AEW Tag Team Gold. The next match was Kenny Omega versus Penta El Zero Miedo. Oh lord, this match is definitely worth your time if you can only pick one match from this show to watch. If we are using the Wrestling Observer star ratings for best match of the night, this and the main event were both tied with 4.5 stars. If you know anything about Omega and Penta El Zero Miedo, then it should be no surprise to you that this match is an absolute banger. As for where these two are now, Omega is involved with one of the top storylines currently on AEW television, which isn't much of a surprise considering his place in wrestling history. As we mentioned earlier with our Hangman Page description, Omega is tied up in the Elite vs. Blackpool Combat Club story and is currently one of the EVPs of AEW. Penta is also in AEW, having been a former tag team and trios champion with his brother Rey Fenix. The man known as Pentagon Jr. elsewhere throughout the world and is one of the most electric wrestlers you will ever witness. And because I want to tell this to anyone who is new to wrestling, go out of your way to watch the Lucha Brothers versus the Young Bucks from AEW All Out 2021. It's quite possibly my favorite tag team match of all time. In the semi-main event, we have one of wrestling's all-time greats, Kazuchika Okada versus Marty Scrull. Alright, I'm not going to take time to glorify anything about Marty Scrull, so here's what you need to know. It came out that he tried taking advantage of an inebriated underage woman a few years back and has since been essentially blacklisted from wrestling. And that's where he's at now. 100 years from now, when the world looks back on wrestling's all-time greats, there's a fairly decent chance that Kazuchika Okada may be listed in a top 10 list in the year 21-23. While you can obviously say that Kenny Omega is the New Japan version of Kenny Omega considering how much time he has spent there, Okada is to Japanese wrestling as Omega is to North American wrestling. Without a shadow of a doubt, one of the absolute best to step inside the squared circle. Okada's average match rating on Cage Match is an absurd 9.68 out of 10, which beats Kenny Omega's absurd 9.52. This match at All In is no exception for being a good pro wrestling match, but if you want to watch Okada regularly, there's only one place to do that, and it's New Japan Pro Wrestling. At least until Forbidden Door later this month. Before we discuss the main event of All In, if you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to hit the like button, and of course, if you're a fan of pro wrestling, hit the subscribe button for more content just like this. All In's main event is an absolute fever dream at this point, as it featured the Golden Elites Kota Ibushi and the Young Bucks taking on Bandido, Rey Fenix, and Rey Mysterio. Yes, that Rey Mysterio was a part of All In and is the WWE Hall of Famer I alluded to at the start of this video. I shouldn't have to explain anything about Rey Mysterio. The dude is an absolute legend and is responsible for the creation of one of WWE's hottest heels currently and his son, Dominic Mysterio. Rey can be seen mostly hanging around the LWO, formerly known as Legado del Fantasma. His partners Bandido and Rey Fenix are both with All Elite Wrestling, and having touched on Fenix's brother Penta El Zero Miedo earlier, you probably know all you need to know about him. Absolute stud in the ring and with his brother, simply one of the best tag teams in the world. As for their opponents, the Young Bucks are prominently featured in AEW as two of the company's executive vice presidents, and at this moment, as we've touched on twice in this video, currently involved in a feud with the Blackpool Combat Club. But we haven't discussed their partner Kota Ibushi. The inaugural IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, like many others on the show, is a fantastic wrestler. We discussed Omega and Okada's cage match rating average being absurd. Well, Ibushi is not too far behind at 9.42. Ibushi's recent history hasn't been too kind to him, as he has only wrestled 2 matches in the last 2 years, both being back in March of this year when he beat Speedball Mike Bailey and Joey Janela on back-to-back nights for GCW. He injured himself in the G1 against Okada back in the fall of 2021 and had a falling out with New Japan, so as of this video he is currently a free agent. With the recent heel turn of Konosuke Takeshita at Double or Nothing, which saw him help the Blackpool Combat Club defeat the Elite, rumors have been swirling like crazy that Kenny Omega is out to recruit Ibushi, especially after these comments on Dynamite.
It has been said, it is rumored that Kenny Omega has left the country, gone back to Canada based upon what has happened the past 3 weeks.
And Kenny's out of the country, yeah, but he's not in Canada, okay?
Will we see Ibushi finally debut in AEW? It is absolutely possible, but only time will tell. And that does it for all the wrestlers that were a part of the All In event in September of 2018. There are plenty of other people involved in this event that were ringside during matches or even announcing, and if you didn't know better, you would think this was an AEW event. With Justin Roberts and Bobby Cruz handling ring introductions, and Excalibur, Ian Riccaboni, and Don Callis calling the action, and of course the absurd amount of people in this video that are current AEW wrestlers. This was truly the origin story of All Elite Wrestling, and was absolutely a look into the future of the quality of events that would be produced by Tony Khan. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, help us out by hitting the like button, and of course subscribing to the channel so you can enjoy content like this every single Sunday. We do our long form deep dive contents for Sunday nights, and throughout the week we may do other videos such as Impact on Access TV reviews, live pay-per-view watch-alongs, and news updates throughout the week. I want to thank everyone for their incredible support so far, as we are only a month into this channel and have already cruised past the 150 subscriber mark and have 2 videos over the 3,000 view mark. So thank you so much, and we will catch you on the next one.